Hollywood Diggs caught the first one and ran to his airship. Davis caught one near the mayor and both brigadiers. One was picked out of a vat of chili by Milano. The airborne leaflets fell all across Allentown and littered the snowdrifts. Mafia folk everywhere looked at the tiger emblem of the Royal Arms and read the message aloud.
Soldiers, the Buffalo Bills, Mafia, and Nation. The mighty Imperial Raj of the Bengal subcontinent seeks to renew our ambitious alliance. At the stroke of midnight, December the 31 of 1867, the Royal Bengal Air Force rose above the call of duty to break the blockade of Baltimore before signing terms of surrender. This brave action wholly ended the universal suffering faced in the deserts of your nation, now fertile with dignity. Today, both our realms consolidate more victories than any other pairing in history. And we have dispatched the warring chiefs. The Crown seeks economic trade, social discourse, and multiverse statesmanship in a new group of two, C2. Please accept Imperial escort this week to the Jungle Mahal for an unprecedented summit of dignity leaders. Secretary of State, the Right Honorable Lord Taylor.
A fleet of orange and black aeroplanes buzzed overhead toward the impenetrable Sabertooth Mountains. Only 2 days after they reopened the trails and road of Allentown, they were off again. Luckily, the Bills nor their special escort would be required to climb, as the weakening portal was said to be discovered through the mountains, rather than in them. And what a week it was. Trekking through the snow on sleds with bison teams and huskies, the Bills were in snow-white uniforms, with as much pomp as Rough Riders might ever muster. Crossing the glacial lakes, they first smelled the mango fruit and tropical spices. But soon, their leader, Bowie Knox, lowered his scarf and raised his goggles. Sweltering heat mixed in the wind, not cooling, but braiding itself into the air. It made tracking easy to follow, as if that were even necessary, because the sounds of the Hindustani music and tropical shama birds rang out. Until they saw it. The largest weakening portal ever bridged. As large as a K-12 mountain, the circle melted a window through time and ice to reveal the miniature ambassadors at the edge of the Bengal jungle. Would you look at that? Said Josh in wonder, looking to the lead ambassador shaking hands with McDermott. Here I thought I'd seen everything. The tropical rainforest? Or the 2 tigers they're holding? No. 2 men with red hair. Commander Dalton, greeted McDermott with one of the largest smiles he'd ever shown anyone, let alone a possible enemy.
Brigadier McDermott. Right good to see you, old chap,
said the ambassador wearing a spotless white uniform with tiger orange trim.
Only they call you a lieutenant general now. I'm something of an air vice marshal myself.
How about an old friend? Said J.B.L. Poyer, Esquire, offering his hand in warm greeting. Mr. Hyde sends you his regards, Vice Marshal.
Friend will do fine. Just fine,
said Dalton.
Then friends got a hug,
said Blizzard Dancer, running in, followed by Dawkins, Milano, First Son, and Yukon Lawson.
Hey, Bells, listen up, said McDermott. This here's Ambassador Dalton of the East Bengal Company.
Well, no, I guess you're a bit of an empire now. That's what the Empress keeps telling me.
This man, with Air Specialist Boyd, fought in a battle that was meaningless to them, with so much persistence and valor that halfway across the multiverse, they became some of our finest heroes to end the great drought.
At this, Josh's smile faded. Instead, he started to clap and cheer and celebrate this stranger. Heck, he'd give him money if he had any.
Thank you, sir.
Josh shouted at the delegation.
No need. Your Mafia folk beat you to it. You lads donated enough dignity that I could construct a tiger sanctuary.
Yes, they're good at that,
said Josh.
Good indeed. And I'd leave it at that.
Said Dalton.
They are good.
The photographer took an image of the 5 bills with Dalton, the last remaining veterans of the Water Wars. I already liked the jungle. Small realm, big dignity, bigger hearts.
Are we waiting for another platoon or two, Major General Bean?
Asked Dalton with another warm handshake. Bean looked out at the bridge between glaciers and banyan trees. About 50 of the finest men and women in the multiverse stood in the sun-dappled trees.
This is the whole show? Right. Very good then. Whole show. Ha!
Shouted Ambassador Dalton.
Welcome to the jungle.
The planes flew overhead as the contingent trekked through every shade of green in the stunning Sinasanati Ghats. Streaks of white waterfalls poured from the green, only to dye brown as they collected nutritious mud. The buffalo soldiers forded these rivers with bison or walked the rope bridges. They boarded a waiting steamer with 1 stack and white vapor, enjoying tikka masala and naan as they cruised upstream. Bengal tigers on board roared to their cousins in the treetops.
Bengals are the most sacred here. You will see many,
said Dalton, leaning on the railing next to the gunslinger. They don't attack?
Well, no. Not their friends.
The tableaus Josh saw made an impression. Yes, of temples in the sun, calling worshippers to prayer. Yes, of swimming rhinos, and pythons, riverside macaques, and peacocks. But it was the men, the bills, in full white dress riding the riverboat. Natives, cowboys, cooks, watching the water, feeding the monkeys, tasting the curries. Knox carved a figurine. Hawkeye drew a telescope to the canopy. Morris and Slim, sleeping against a lifeboat painted with intricate flowers and hanging bells. Hey, everybody, Dawkins said, and it was all he needed to say. A giant elephant walked over the river. As large as their boat, and splashing a casual waterfall onto her back. It was enormous. The boat tooted its whistle and cruised on through the jungles. It was morning next when the first train churned past on the riverbank and causeway. It was crowded with people on both the inside and clinging to the outside. At least 100 train surfers rode the roof.
Who they?
Dalton asked the ship captain.
Pilgrims. We just passed Newport Run. Our first stop, and it's already full. The radios are reporting it the biggest broadcast in the history of the festival.
Whoa, whispered Josh to Dawkins. A whole trainload? It was the understatement of the year. The Bills delegation arrived by ship and first set eyes on the 9 million people crowded into the city built for only 6 million. And it seemed every one of them lined the boulevard from the riverfront to the Capitol. The Bengal Palace,
The Bengal Mahal,
introduced Dalton.
and all of her masses.
The palace rose like pearls from the jungle foliage. Palm gardens adorned her balconies, elephants guarded her doors, and every soldier and musician wore intricate flowered garments.
How do we get there?
Asked Doc.
You walk.
Said Dalton.
It's a parade. They are here for you.
2 Bengal tigers leapt off the boat and lunged into the crowd with snarls. The sea of people found a way to part. The tigers bowed their ears to thank them for their compliance and carried on. The ambassadors and generals were driven forward in glittering Rolls-Royce convertibles, waving to the crowds. The gunslinger of Allentown waved his firearm, and the Buffalo Bill Wild West Show and Congress of Rough Riders walked the route, heard the chants, smelled the orange and black gulal powder. Every temple grew larger, every chant louder, the throne garlands richer. Diggs helped the cameramen from the BBC find the best angles to gain extra access. But the platform of Multiverse radio reporters was staggering. A trainload themselves, sat in the elevated tents speaking every language into their microphones with various call signs and symbols. Josh only recognized a handful based on their costumes and technology. LA of 2049 with a pacifier, a Kansas Scout, a Son of Liberty, a steampunk reporter of steel, Miami, King Henry, a robo-link from the Motown Tomorrow Network, a pirate, 5 dozen more. This was so much bigger than Cincinnati in the Buffalo Nation.
Nearing 24 million listeners, I'm told, sir.
Said Dalton to McDermott.
Just to watch a peace summit.
To watch the most powerful realms of the multiverse.
Dalton continued.
The expectation is this negotiation will determine the center of the super collapse.
And is that the real reason we're here then? Asked the Lieutenant General from the parallel car.
I'm afraid so, sir. Figured it best to plant the seed now.
Broadcasters and translators of every language repeated the words of the Royal Bengal announcer.
And here comes the gunslinger to Allentown.
Cheers rattled like an earthquake of noise.
The first soldier in the multiverse to ever shoot 4,000 yards and satellite 750 yards in a year. And tonight, in the mighty Bengal Empire, he is 4 mounted yards away from doing it again. His next dignity score will make Josh of Allentown the first soldier in the multiverse to ever capture 175 scores in their first tour of 5 years. The Buffalo Nation has won 12 battles, including 3 consecutive on foreign soil in only 12 days, including 4 super collapse winning generals. Despite numerous fatal attacks and disasters, including the deadliest storm to ever hit their nation only last week, they have not lost in 6 straight battles.
The Bills were ushered into pillowed chairs on a special platform of the Royal Palace. Hot damn! You feel pretty proud of all that? Asked Diggs to Josh, shooting looks to the cameras and waving to the crowds. Josh looked around at the same crowds. Elephant warriors, surrounding palace. In an endless jungle that could only be crossed by a ship from a different era than the Firebaugh. He realized with those warm, gushing remarks too delicious to resist, they were now led into the very heart of another foreign continent, outnumbered 9 million to 50. I feel like A sitting duck, to be honest. No, stop that. The Bengals are our friends. Yeah, well, maybe you trust cats more than I do. I tame cats, Captain Hunch. I tame them, said Diggs. But not today. They know our story. It holds heavier than mountains. Tigers will kill just about anything alive. Except tigers. Two tigers know that a duel will ultimately kill both of them. That's why we're here for statecraft. And killing ain't the only way to win, grumbled Josh. What is the game? Suddenly all of the fires were extinguished in the colonial capital. Torches, pyres, and pillars of flame went dark. "9 million people roared like a tsunami. Ambassador Dalton stood up and moved to the front of the Bills delegation. What is this? Assassin? Riot? Prayer? Josh cocked his firearm.
And now for the real show,
Said Dalton.
At the end, look down the boulevard and across the river for the ultimate message and finale.
The final message? Asked Hamlin. The real show? Diggs mumbled. Arc lights snapped on from the colonial turrets, and the spotlights swung and found the same parade route, only now filled with drama, flair, and theatrics. Secretary Lord Taylor followed the Bengal color guards in not a Rolls Royce, but an elephant hoda, a throne-like saddle and tent on a Bengal elephant as large as the giant of the jungle. He didn't wave, but he let the drums beat behind him. The day and the who. The announcer billowed into the speakers. The Multiverse heard translations.
Her Majesty's Imperial Bengals have won not 6, but 7 battles in succession, adding to her 11 victories, and claim to the first seed of dignity. Mount Tigers have not only vanquished the fearsome chiefs in weakening season, like the Buffalo Nation, but also in the dangerous winter war. For it was this imperial force that centered the Multiverse inside of the super collapse of last year.
The roar of 9 million Bengals at once deafened the speakers. Spotlights followed the spotless uniforms of the soldiers. There was Air Specialist Boyd of the famous Dalton Boyd trench run to break the blockade, to give Buffalo the water war. The veteran was not yet a statesman, but a flight sergeant. And there was the newcomer, in all white, leading 2 white Bengal tigers, as cool as a rock. The new Dalton, as far as the Bills understood. But don't tell him that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Her Majesty's first son and heir apparent, Prince Joseph of Hardcover.
Applause all around. The Bills gave perfunctory claps. Boy, he looks cool, said Blizzard Dancer.
I'd look that cool too if I didn't have to work for my clothes,
joked Morse.
Prince Joseph is only 12 shots away, hit or misses from qualifying for and thus becoming the most accurate shooter in the history of the Multiverse.
Josh looked left. He looked right. He saw the look on their faces. It was the look he felt himself. What is the game? This is gonna be a shootout. Flight Sergeant Boyd capped off the parade, cutting loose a parade float, becoming a balloon, sailing it into the night sky. That's it? Scoffed Diggs. Floating in a hot air balloon? Then, on Prince Joseph's signal, Boyd dove out of the balloon with no parachute. The crowd and half the Bills gasped and got out of their seats. A low-flying Bengal bomber plane swooped in beneath him, right over the parade route, and caught him in midair on the wing. It was an absolute spectacle that Josh already started to calculate how the Wild West show could outcompete. That's the game. How could the Bills make a louder, prouder final message? What would that message be? Somehow, having buried 55 Mafia folk this season had cooled his appetite for glorifying military prowess, even though they had it. Cooled his thirst for using violence, and certainly never murdered to edge out competition or even an enemy. It seemed the youngest among them was already ahead of them. It takes believers to train the cynics, and the youngest believer knew the game. He knew the story. He knew the checkmate. He knew the new answer. When the arcing spotlight swiveled across the riverfront, when the announcer of the Multiverse drew all 24 million people's attention to the grand finale of the opening ceremony, there was Hamlin. Hamlin. 24 million people, minus about 50, didn't even know the youngling's name. Many of them didn't speak his language. More of them didn't want his realm to succeed. But they saw his message. They understood his message. They felt his message. Simple, universal, paramount. Hamlin threw his hands up, far over his head, and brought them together in a heart. Simple, universal, paramount. Choose love. A flash of light erupted behind Hamlin, and another, and another. A carpet of finale firework bombs had been dropped from an airplane. No one was meant to be down there. No one was when Higgins deployed them. But someone was now. Hamlin, not aware, dove for cover. Hamlin, not hit, stood up again. Hamlin, not alive, collapsed. Simple, universal, paramount. "24 million people fell silent in the multiverse. Combat medic Denny Wellington fought death. 3 snowflakes fell in the jungle.
He's not breathing!
He's not
breathing!
He's not breathing, they kept saying. JB, that title didn't matter anymore. Poe fell to the ground. His kid, his new partner, fighting like hell to fill Hyde's half, was dead beside him. When they say that Wellington and Doc and the Bengal medics fought to keep his body available for life, they battled. It was vigorous warfare, played out as violent and intense as any shot Josh of Allentown took, any dive Hollywood Diggs ever risked, or any sacrifice 4-0 wrought on enemy snipers. In 10 seconds, Wellington raced in faster than Slim, and for 10 minutes, eternity, the medic pounded on the youngling's chest. Josh of Allentown clutched his head and turned away. The muscles in his face and neck turned to liquid. Seeing a ghost was enough. But I just talked to him. Bucktail Jackson, Cookie, and the kids sprinted to their best friend. Bowie tried to hold them back, to try to give the field surgeons a chance.
Hamlin!
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 He gave Bowie a chance to look away. Gave Bowie something to do besides losing another brother this year. He clenched his jaw tight enough that he could split his teeth. Bigfoot Phillips and Rawhide Oliver openly wept. Milano ripped open Hamlin's new uniform and underlinen for Doc. "Come on, bud. Wake up, kiddo." Lizard Dancer openly screamed.
No! Baby! He's just a kid!
The only one in a city of 9 million to make a sound. Bear Morse embraced his brother and clutched his head to his beard. Morse's eyes burned in fear. "I'm so sorry," said Prince Joseph to Josh. There were no hellos or nice to meet yous. There couldn't be. I just talked to him and he was fine. I don't know if he's... How long will they keep trying?
He just started.
No. It's been over 10 minutes. Hollywood cried. He guided Boyd's plane to a landing strip both armies fashioned in the craters together. Dawkins, Motor, and Basham dragged the plane as close as possible to Hamlin for when he woke up. Ambassador Dalton, Lord Taylor, and General Bean coordinated with Boyd the most direct flight path to the best hospital in the Bengal Empire. Brigadier Fraser prayed the prayer. The same prayer he prayed at every single one of the other 55 unexpected funerals this year. Devastation, exhaustion, heartbreak, and limitless hope marked every face. Every face was a tableau of 10,000 emotions in one single thought. Simple, universal, paramount, miracle. In the great beyond, in the overtime, when painters, minstrels, and poets remember this year for the bills, they will very likely say that the greatest catches were Utah Davis, grabbing a flying razor with one hand across town and ripping it out of the hands of the Steeler gang and snagging a 98-yard deterrence bomb. The greatest shot was Josh sniping a bullet through a robotic lion's jaws of death to spring the latch on Diggs' trapdoor in no time. They may say the greatest sacrifice was 4-0, obliterating the Mohawk's chariot, or the king's cousin in the open gate. Or the greatest aerial stunt was Diggs summoning the Viking blood of House Moss to catch an electrified harpoon with one hand. But it should be undisputed that the overall best play of the year, if not the greatest act in the history of the Buffalo Bills Wild West show, was from a no-name farmer who didn't have two first names of greatness or a legendary backstory known across the multiverse. But on the second day of the new year, Denny Wellington helped execute the most difficult play with the highest stakes and the most people watching. Resurrection. When Hamlin needed a savior, he got one. The unconscious body of the youngling was loaded into the Royal Bengal airplane and flown by its best pilot at full throttle to the best surgeons of 1917. Once again, Flight Sergeant Boyd carried a miracle of dignity on the Bill's behalf, and the most important flight of his life. Hamlin was not awake, but his body breathed with strong lungs, and his blood pumped with a strong heart. In the crater-ridden field, McDermott called for his men to circle the wagons in a voice no louder than he'd use in a chapel. He didn't have to. The city of millions, the grand announcers and translators let silence in. As uncanny as it is to see a son collapse, to see his brothers desperately grieve and plead for him, it was almost hard to remember the largest population center they had ever been in, a rally engineered for celebration or battle, just watched without words. Their reverent bodies became the chapel, temple, and sanctuary. The Bills in tear-stained, blood-stained white uniforms were the altar. They prayed in a circle. They became one. Choose love. Across the river, 24 million people, royalty, viceroys, and citizens, wondered what came next. Even in a multiverse where anything could happen. Not this. Not before tonight, and hopefully never again. These uncharted waters did not have a leader. Lieutenant General took one look at the enormity of the task and the 10,000 choices that would explode from this decision in real time and make history. If they lost Hamlin, McDermott asked if he could even face another battle against a fantasy army and take it seriously. Make it worth beating, bleeding, beautiful life. God, what I would give to have that heartbeat back. McDermott was fighting the fantasy demons right now. The dragons and Vikings and ravens inside your skull. The doubts and metaphors and stress and fear and grandiose commitments that you can never take back after you do know better. McDermott took a breath. Took another strong, deep breath and trusted that he had a process, that he could be everything these desperate men, the throngs of people, the core principles of the multiverse needed him to be. But Lieutenant General McDermott was also just Sean. Another human, like you, with no magic powers, no different than us. A human who could take strength from the idea, the story of what a great leader can be, of what a great lieutenant general should do. And now, that leader needed to simply make the next right decision. Secretary Taylor?
Anything we can do to help, Lieutenant General. Nothing is off the table.
You might as well just say, what are your orders, leader? Whether he wanted to be or not, McDermott was just promoted emperor of this unprecedented crisis. Let's get our units to the boat. They're traumatized. They can't keep looking at the trigger.
Where to?
Asked Lord Taylor. Ask me again in 5 minutes. As he walked to the waiting steamship that had raced most of them across the river, he had no idea the next right decision. But the walking helped. Seeing Josh's eyes and shaking fingers as he covered his mouth for discretion gave him clues he didn't know he needed. And the report was all about ideas and tips and wishful thinking people had to help Hamlin. McDermott didn't even notice there wasn't a word about a prince or a Bengal or a weakness in the palace wall or dignity. He didn't notice because it wasn't on his mind either. Important clues. Peace needed to be discussed, or rather that dignity needed to be haggled. As dignity must be transferred, that was the law of nature. The strong seed held the high ground for the entire Winter War, Academy basics. The Bills and Imperial Bengals had both vanquished the war chiefs. They both had apparent claim to the strong seed. To fight through this deadly season and not have a fortified position in the coming onslaughts would be devastating. And they had earned it. They deserved the strong seed, and his men had been so poised in the palace to demonstrate anything to leverage negotiations. And now, not one of those thoughts came to mind. On the ship that had once been tableaus of hard winter soldiers kissed by the sun and cruising smooth water, were now tableaus of silence and tears. Not a word was spoken from leaders, from clowns, from bone crushers, from lawyers. Because if any word were to come out, it would be, did we lose him? Did they fly away a body and they don't want to tell us? Did we lose a brother, a child, a friend, a lifetime? So the first person to speak was the red-headed general. Buffalo Nation, listen up. If he could convert this energy into a rally, a bloodlust revenge, even if it was a white lie, he might unleash the most powerful form of a stampede that the multiverse had ever seen. He looked at the color of Josh's neck. His baseline would be adrenaline all night. He knew men would want to punch harder, yell louder, win bigger than ever before. And once they felt how good it felt to release pain and fear and suffering on another living creature, it would only double and double and double. Sure, there may be retaliation and escalation. It might end in a caged hammer fight. Sure, it might escalate the laws of violence in the multiverse forever, to capitalize on a feeding frenzy. But that might be okay, if they got what they needed before it was too late. The nation only needed one super collapse victory. Then the future was someone else's problem. The next right choice. Or he could choose love. Choose love. Simple, universal, and paramount. The way of the Mafia. We're not going back out there, McDermott said. No matter what that makes the outcome of this summit. It's not more important. Whew. Josh of Allentown let out an audible breath. You men have been stronger tonight than ever. Tougher, grittier, more manly than I've ever seen. Because real warriors band together. They tell the truth. Even when they're in pain, or scared, or need help. That's how we know to help. And Buffalo doesn't need you to be soldiers tonight. We need you to be brothers. Diggs assigned himself the most important mission. He took off his uniform, dove into the bay, and went incognito. He commandeered a rickshaw and used all of his skills as a super spy to track Boyd's airplane across the Bengal Empire.
Lieutenant General,
asked Bengal's Secretary of State, Lord Taylor. He had the entire empire on standby for help.
where to?
Home. It was 3:30 in the morning when the steamship pushed off downriver. The jungle town slipped away. Tigers and elephants and a buffalo youngling left behind. Did we lose? Hamlin. Hamlin! Hamlin? Josh saw the life-fighting scene every time he blinked. A wallpaper of trauma. Josh jumped to see Gardner Dawkins, looking into his eyes. Concerned, bloodshot. I just saw him. So did we, said Dawkins. Other eyes, Davis, Lawson, Big Iron, had faraway expressions. Kept their eyes open to avoid the wallpaper of battle. Guys will be forever changed, said Josh. McDermott took another path. A ferry, a back door, an airplane, a carriage, a palace gate, a front door, a knee, a weakening. In an enclave of another realm, McDermott approached several men in black and white costumes. They were the obnoxious Stripes Guard with their spears and flags.
Halt! That is Neutrales Territorium!
But McDermott didn't slow down a beat. I'm sorry, I don't speak Stripes German. They pursued, he fought. McDermott lost them in the basement of St. Lombardi's Basilica and told the first acolyte in the halls why and exactly how he needed to find a linesman. The linesman, at the switchboard, patched him through to the circuit judge on call, who approved the request to contact a smitten referrer. McDermott was rushed away through the Holy See. Tablets were consulted, untouchable law books referenced, and chains moved. McDermott told the smitten referrer why and exactly how he needed to find an officiant priest. This motion was flagged as illegal contact and defensive. It was always the middle managers. McDermott was placed in holding. A familiar Stripes Guard, now with a black eye, locked the door. But McDermott had a flag of his own, and he declared a challenge. When the referrer was summoned to the challenge, he looked down his nose.
You do realize that if you lose,
You forfeit your right to any time out. Of this place? I do. When the referrer returned from the confessional booth, he ordered McDermott released. In a realm so black and white, the guards simply unlocked him, and the middle manager referred McDermott to an officiant priest, who heard why and exactly how McDermott needed to have an audience with none other than Prophet Roger Godtells. The officiant understood the circumstances, considerations, and consequences of a historic weakening where no dignity was transferred, where no strong seed was determined, where balance in the multiverse had been lost. McDermott was dismissed and fined with encroachment and leverage a black and white world must. But his ideas and story of love and leadership filled the legislature. The prophet was summoned. The conclave was locked and sealed by the holy shield. Hundreds of striped guards stood at the sentry posts, and hundreds more officiants in robes of black and white debated in seclusion the next right choice. For days, the multiverse watched the Comestine Chapel chimney for black or white smoke to indicate a failure or a majority. Bills and Royal Bengals, Mafia folk, and grieving citizens around the world hung in the in-between of black and white, not knowing Hamlin's fate, not knowing their expected state. But in the time of unknowns, as if to fill the voids of uncertainty, almost every soul in the multiverse made the most important thing undeniably clear. Every enemy, every ally, every no-name farmer, every immortal, from gunslingers to war chiefs, to elders to jets, from Sherpas to mermaidens, to Valkyrie, to a lone saber in space vanquishing 3 enemy ships, his third time with 3 minutes of oxygen left. It was simple, it was universal, it was paramount. Love for Damar.